Oh, man. Let's bring our friend Jason Cole in. I can't wait for that game because Jason was right. I should have listened to you, my friend, about the
Mhm.
Dallas Cowboys. They're like a cheating wife. They
Yep.
will always cheat. And Jason, I've never heard more excuses this week. It was a bad night. We're just as good as they are. And this is
They got
ass
smacked.
kicking.
They got smacked. They got beat up in that game, right? Like that game was uglier than that score indicated because they really got pushed around on the field. Now, I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying that Dallas can't beat San Francisco because the previous two times it was very close. But this San Francisco team has improved and they're healthy and all those other things right now. And they're playing about as well as they can possibly play here over the first 5 games. And when they're playing as well as they can possibly play, Dallas can't really touch them. What Dallas needs is for the 49ers to regress a little bit, and then the Cowboys have to play as well as they can possibly play and make everything happen and not have Micah Parsons disappear in this game and not put Dak Prescott in so many pressure situations. And then they might have a chance. But when Micah Parsons comes out after the game and says, "Oh no, we're like, dude, this was not close." They, like McCaffrey fumbles at the 1. Otherwise this game's a runaway even faster.
They took the guys out in the third.
I know they did. Look, this could have been a 70-point kind of game if they had wanted to keep going. They just said, "Look, we're done, and this game's over." Like my favorite moment, and this is a player. They call back that 40-yarder to Ayuk down the left-hand side, and this is early in the third quarter, first possession of the third quarter for San Francisco. He throws it, 3rd and 3. They get 40 yards out of it. Holding call, bring it back. And you're like, okay, now it's 3rd and 13. You can at least force a punt, but maybe you can get a turnover right here, or maybe a sack on Purdy. You're in position now, Cowboys, and this is 21-10 game. It's still a possibility if you can make something happen here. And what does Purdy do? He drops back. He throws a 42-yarder right in the middle of their defense. That was an FU throw. That was I'm taking you out. I don't care. I'm going right at your heart and putting a dagger right through your chest and ending this game. And they get a touchdown. It's 28-10, game is over. That was that kind of a play by Brock Purdy in the third quarter. And that's where they got to be able to get to him.
How about this, Jace? I don't know because, again, we got to segment it. But in his last 10 games, Brock Purdy's thrown 22 touchdowns and 4 picks. In all your years covering the game, have you, with a 73% completion percentage, have you ever seen a guy in your life, Marino, that came on?
There's 4 guys that I can compare him to. Okay. To say like the beginning of their career was this good. Okay. It's obviously Tom Brady his first year. Okay. Now they didn't do a lot with Tom Brady, but they did win a Super Bowl, right? And he made some key plays. Kurt Warner's first year as a starter in St. Louis, where they averaged 30 a game, right? And I just wrote this story for the 33rd team this week. Okay. So Kurt Warner wins a Super Bowl. Offense is awesome in St. Louis, right? Marino, first year he starts, and then going into the second year where he throws the record 48 touchdown passes right there. And the fourth one is Ben Roethlisberger, who goes 13-0 to start his career with a team that obviously was defense oriented, right? But those 4 guys, and 2 of those are first round picks, right? 2 of them are already Hall of Famers, all 4 of them are going to end up in the Hall of Fame, right? That's what Brock Purdy's done. Like that's the comp right now in terms of just like what he's accomplished. And I'm not saying he's the same talent as those guys.
Right.
Like don't put that on.
I'm not either.
But the results are the results. And you can say anything you want about it. He's surrounded with talent. He's got a great system. He's got a great team. You can say all of that. You still got to make plays. You still got to get rid of the ball. And it's not just 22-4. If you include the playoff games that he played in, his 13 games that he's played the majority of it, right? Take out the Philly game because he got knocked out early in that game. Take out some other games where he played along the way. But if you just talk about the 13 games, 11 regular season games, and 2 more in the playoffs he's played, 25 touchdown passes, 4 interceptions. His rating is 113 and through 13 games. Patrick Mahomes' career rating is 105, right? Like, and that's the record. And again, he's not that kind of talent. Brock Purdy can't. He's not making throws on the run, off platform and all those things. I mean, that's not him, right? But man, he's making every throw that they ask him to make. And again, that 3rd and 13 play that I just talked about, he's not a big cannon armed guy who's can throw it around defenders. He plants it right in the right place. This kid he's truly special on a special team. Like, all the timing is perfect for this to happen.
How about this too? It's not so much just the performance, obviously, and the production is there's supremium issue why we're talking about him. But look at the things that he's doing for the organization without even having to lift a finger. Okay, he's $937,000. The cap ramifications on that. This is how you build dynasties. You build dynasties in football like this because your quarterback gives you the luxury of 3 years of not having to pay him. Then you cover up that nightmare of Trey Lance by losing those 3 ones. Then you all of a sudden make the McCaffrey deal because you got a quarterback that gets him the ball, unlike what they did in Carolina with him. Now you're looking at everything, and look at Ayuk developing. Look at Debo is now almost the second guy on that offense. Next, this guy has made everything around him. And you could say the same shit about Jalen Hurts in Philly. He's got a lot of talent around him. That guy's not doing what that guy's doing in San Francisco, and he's got the play caller.
I don't know if there's a dynasty here or not, because look, they've already been good for 4 years, right? And they've
not good enough too.
No, not good enough, but they've been awfully good, right? Like, most fans would sit there and say, I'd take their last 4 years over what I've had the last 4 years. Most. But I don't know look, I think that the priority for Kyle Shanahan, get one. Just, everything is set up for you this year. Knock on wood, your team stays healthy. You survive the regular season, some things happen, all those things. If that can finally happen, right? This roster is as good as any in the league, and you take your shot against anybody that, any all comers, whether it's Kansas City, whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's Buffalo, Miami, whoever you get, right? You're like, look, we'll take our shot against anybody right now. And they're, right now playing I think they're playing the most consistent football in the entire league, right?
Yeah.
Game in and game out. Get the one title. And yes, theoretically, you can keep doing this because Purdy's cheap. But remember, Kittle's is a little long in the tooth, right? McCaffrey's been banged up during his career. You got to get one before you start talking about anything else. And if you're Kyle Shanahan, after being so close for 4 years, you just got to sit there and go, I got to get one. I got to finish this one time. Especially you're Kyle Shanahan, where you made those calls in that game against Atlanta, for Atlanta against New England, and you've been living with those calls for years, right? You were this close, and you made a couple of bad calls. It doesn't mean you're a bad offense coordinator. You're a genius of an offense coordinator, but you made a couple of bad calls in that game when you were this close to winning a Super Bowl. You got to get one. So get that one first.
I said this about the Eagles in the NFC East. It's funny. People go, well, now the Eagles have a 2-game lead on the Philadelphia Eagles, or the Eagles have a 2-game lead on the Cowboys now. And I said, a 2-game lead? The Eagles have a 10-year lead on the Cowboys. They do so many things fundamentally different, Jason, that look at what's happening now. I don't think the Cowboys are a better team than they were a year ago. And in the last 3 years, I'm seeing them regress, not get better. I don't see a better team this year because, again, the 49er game, you and I can go like this. Okay, well, the Niners are an elite. Okay, the Cardinal game is the one that is the asterisk for me because That's a team that's probably going to be in the top 5 in picks, and they ran you over. I mean, the Eagles are retooling at 5-0. They're retooling. The Cowboys are making excuses for getting killed. That's the fundamental difference between those two organizations.
Look, we can go plank by plank with whatever you want to do, talking about why the Cowboys aren't very good, or certainly not as good as people pretend that they should be. Right? They're not getting it done, and I don't know that it's all Mike McCarthy's fault. I don't know if it's Dak Prescott's fault. You can blame a lot of people, but this is the history of the Cowboys over the last basically 30 years, ever since they won their last Super Bowl. They're trying to become they're trying to recreate that somehow and get right back there and do it really fast and taking shortcuts all the time instead of, okay, no, you got to build this thing and do it right. You got to have the right people in place. You got to make sure that you're deep, as deep as you possibly can. You have to have football people in charge making good football decisions, not an owner who's a wannabe coach / wannabe GM running the show. That doesn't work. Okay, because his mentality is too geared toward, okay, let's get the immediate payoff. Right? Well, no, this is not an immediate payoff thing. You got to grind this thing out. And right now they're not grinding it. They're not doing things that should put them in a position to dominate games like against Arizona. Put a team like Arizona away and then be ready to play in a big game against the 49ers without having to talk about it. Like Mike McCarthy last week, before that game, shouldn't have had to talk about how big a game it is. Jerry Jones shouldn't have had to talk about how the Super Bowl goes through San Francisco to get his team fired up. Not for a regular season game. You should be waiting on that for when it's a really truly meaningful game in like week 15 or 16 or in the playoffs, right? Where that's the kind of emotion you want to get. If you're trying to get to that emotional high right now in week 5, you're not going to be able to sustain that all the way through the remaining 12 weeks of the season. It just doesn't happen. And I think they have the completely wrong mental approach.
2 last questions for you here. How about the conversation now that the Steelers are potentially kicking the tires on John Gruden on being the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh? I mean,
is that true, or is that just Duloc? Is that Jerry Duloc saying, "Oh, Tomlin knows Gruden, therefore it would be wise"? Because that's how I sort of read that as Duloc throwing out Gruden's name because they know him.
So you think it's a throw against the wall one?
Kind of. Maybe it's a way. But that's where it came from, as far as I can see. It was Jerry just throwing the name out there. But look,
Pittsburgh makes sense for that stuff.
Well, it's probably the only place he can come back.
Yeah.
And have some kind of shield because he's got Tomlin there as a shield and Tomlin to vouch for him. That's the only way he's going to overcome, the accusations that he's a racist is to be hired by a guy like Tomlin. And yeah, they do know each other. I know Tomlin's pretty tight with Canada. I don't know why. I don't know why, and I think Tomlin's putting his own job on the line too much by being so tight with Canada, but he's stood by him for a long time, and I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Was Tomlin in Tampa when Gruden was there?
Yeah.
Is that how they know one another?
Yeah, he worked for Gruden. He worked for Gruden.
He was on that staff. Because then he worked for Monty Kiffin.
Yeah. So look, I don't want to say other than when I watch Pittsburgh, it's a high school offense. In terms of design. Say whatever you want about the Patriots and how bad their offense is right now. And there's a few teams, the Giants are awful right now. But Pittsburgh has pretty good talent. I think the Pickett kid can sling it a little bit, right? And they got Pickens out there on the outside, and Johnson. And the running back, they got 2 running backs who are
Najee.
pretty good. And their offensive line's not so bad as it was last year. And when I see them lined up and they've got 4 wides, and the 4 wides all run individual patterns rather than you got 3 on one side and let's stack them or bunch them or and have them run crossing routes underneath, under each other so that you can confuse the secondary and at least get somebody open quick. Like this is really basic stuff. I mean, this is not advanced. This is not advanced play design we're talking. This is not Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan kind of stuff. It's what you see with every team out there, and they don't do it. They make it really hard. They make it really easy for the defense and really hard for Pickett.
Finally, here, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you the impact and the importance of Butkus's career and what he meant to the National Football League and what he meant most notably to the Hall of Fame. Because when I grew up, Jace, there were a few names that were synonymous with pro football. The name Butkus was synonymous with pro football. He's one of the names that I think is he on the Mount Rushmore of pro football guys?
Well, I think Mount Rushmore is pretty crowded, so I don't know if I think there's a good 20 names. Like you go Hallis, Paul Brown's up there, guys like Shula Lombardi, stuff like that. But talk about players, all you have to do is say Butkus. Like that name, right? It's like saying, Sayers, Unitas, Butkus, Manning, Brady. These are guys who go by one name, right? Namath. Namath's career achievements, in terms of stats may not reflect it, but in terms of impact, it does. So, Butkus is like that. He's a defining player in a generation. I mean, he's one of the 2 greatest middle linebackers of all time. And I had an argument with somebody, and I said, it's Ray Lewis in this generation, and it's Butkus of that generation, right? Say whatever you want. These guys are monsters. They define what football is supposed to be about. And somebody said, well, Lambert should be up there. Yeah, Lambert was great. Don't get me wrong. Lambert was fantastic. But he was a tall, skinny guy who, played in the right system where they kept, the Steelers kept people off of him and allowed him to roam around.
Yeah, the guy Joe Green in front may have had something to do with that.
Yeah, right. But Lambert would have been a great player anywhere he played. But he's not Butkus. Like Butkus, like by himself, just like he was 6 foot. What was he? 6'5", 240 pounds at a time when he was just a monster out there, and he could take on anybody and knock anybody around. And he was an athlete, and some people say he was dirty. No, he wasn't a dirty player. He was just so much bigger and stronger and athletic than anybody else that he defined that era. And he was a great football player. He wasn't just a big man.
You know what, too, Jace? I said this about the era that he played. Isn't it crazy that certain cities were defined by that position? Concrete in Philly with Bednarik. New York, you had Sam Huff. In Chicago, you had Butkus. In Green Bay, you had Nitsky. These guys were the faces and how teams in America looked at those respected cities and how they respected the league and what the league was about. Tough, hard work. It's kind of like that's why I think his importance, yes, all that stuff about it playing and how great, but to me, it personified the time, like Chicago. I mean, you could say whatever you want about Jordan, but dude, that's a Bears town and it's a Butkus town. Green Bay, that's a Nitsky town. Okay, now maybe you throw Favre in there or this and that, but those guys were so revered back in the day, Jason.
Well, I mean, part of it is, look, we were at the time in the 60s and 70s, we were revered military type figures, right? Because we were coming out of a post-war era. So I don't want to get too far into some soliloquy about history, but like the guys who were coaches were, guys like Lombardi and Landry,
West Point.
Yeah, these were all those guys. Those guys were the faces of the game, and then the linebackers were. The quarterbacks weren't. I mean, right. Yeah, you had Unitas and Namath, but they weren't necessarily they're not what quarterbacks are today.
No way.
Right? No, it was those.
Maybe Joe. Maybe Joe Namath.
Maybe
Outside of
Joe.
that,
Joe was fun because Joe was fun. But the bottom line is that the country identified with the sort of defense military style that was emblematic of those coaches and those linebackers that you're talking about. So yes, those are the figures, and Butkus is at the top of that totem pole of great linebackers. He's the guy you measured other people, other linebackers from that generation until you get to Ray Lewis. And then Ray Lewis became the measuring stick for that generation of linebackers, starting in 96, and on. We measure guys by Ray Lewis, just like we measured guys by, Otto Graham for a while, and then John Elway. And then now we're getting into the next group of great quarterbacks where we measure everybody by Mahomes or Brady.
I have a tough question to ask you about the process of the Hall of Fame, and I wonder if you know. And I don't want to go too deep into it. Why is Dana Stubblefield on the ballot for the Hall of Fame when he's in prison?
Because he's eligible for the first time, or he's eligible still, because somebody somebody may have asked to keep him on there or not. But guys are eligible.
Wasn't there a kid from New Orleans, that Sharper guy?
Yeah, Sharper was on the ballot for 1 year, and then nobody voted for him.
How come that process had? And I'm not saying you or
because
anyone,
you don't exclude. I mean, I think the simplest answer is you don't exclude guys for off-field conduct. It's you get into the Hall of Fame based on what you did on the field. So theoretically, Dan
So would you
Stubblefield.
vote for? You wouldn't vote for a rapist.
No, I'm not. I would never vote for Darren Sharper. I'd never vote for a guy who's.
I think it puts you
convicted
guys in
of-
very
of
uncomfortable situations when you got names like that on that ballot.
But you just understand the process. You see it. I mean, there's 125 names on that list or whatever it is, right? However names you look at and you go, okay, Dan Stubblefield, and then you just move on.
I think it's a revered list that should have.
No, but this is an eligibility list.
Okay.
Okay, this is the guys who are eligible to be there, to be voted, and they get weeded out. Okay, so he's not going to make the top 25.
No. I know that. I'm just
top 15.
saying it looks weird.
It does, but again, to hold true, because if you get into guys in prison, what crimes count that you remove guys? I mean, then you're getting into a whole sort of moralistic side and judgment that the Pro Football Hall of Fame really doesn't want to get into. I mean,
would you have voted for OJ if OJ was acquitted and he had just been in a 5-year window of being eligible to go to the Hall of Fame?
No, probably not.
Well, it's off the field stuff.
I understand, but there's certain things that, I mean, look, Darren Sharper I didn't vote for.
I know.
Let me just say this: Darren Sharper. If you go look up his career,
no, I agree. He's a great player.
Yeah, there's an argument to have made that he deserved to be in the top 25 and maybe even in the top 15.
15.
I don't think he's good enough to have made it into the Hall of Fame, but he deserved some run more than that as a player.
I get it,
but I'm just not going to do it. And if that means that I get excused from voting, okay, then put somebody else up. But I think that most people are going to agree with me. Don't deal with this.
Yeah,
we're not doing this.
I saw the name and I'm like, wow, Jason.
Well, we had the big argument about LT and his drug issues.
How did you guys deal with that? With all his
I wasn't on the committee then, so I don't want to speak. I just know that Paul Tagliabue.
Well, how'd you deal with Ray Lewis?
Well, Ray Lewis was problematic to me, but I wasn't gonna keep him out for it because that thing is so murky. I don't know what really happened, but I have a pretty darn good idea that OJ killed those two people, right? Yep. Even if he was acquitted, okay, we all know he probably did this. Feel pretty darn strongly about that. Okay. and he's still not looking for the killer. But I don't want to get into that.
No, he's got
But
a heck of a podcast now.
whatever. But I mean, I just like I said, I wouldn't put him in. I wouldn't deal with it, and that was my stance on Darren Sharper. LT, most of the crimes that he committed were things where he was harming himself. I don't think that he, at the time, he's done some other things since then where you go, that's a problem. But he didn't. It's a matter of degrees, and I would put LT in and put him in again. If it had been up to me, I would have put LT in then. I would put him in again. Darren Sharper, I draw the line.
Was Ray Lewis the first ballot?
Yeah, he got in first ballot.
He got in on first ballot. Hey,
I remember there was part of the discussion because I brought it up, and one of the things I brought up because I got jumped on right away. I said, "Look, we had T.O. on the ballot with Randy Moss and Ray Lewis," and I said, "Look, guys, I know we have T.O. on this ballot, and we've had our problems with T.O., but don't." If we're going to put in Ray Lewis this year, which we should do, we better not be talking about what a bad teammate T.O. was. All right? Don't give me the bad teammate thing when Ray Lewis was participated in a situation where two people ended up dead. Again, I'm not saying he's guilty. I don't know what happened, but he certainly didn't help. He obstructed justice. He committed a major crime in that one. I'm not going to hold him out of the Hall of Fame because of it, because I don't know what happened there. And I don't think that he did this. I mean, that's just my guess. I don't know for a fact. I wasn't there. But I'm not going to hold T.O. up if I'm voting for Ray Lewis. And I'm voting for Ray Lewis. So if I'm voting for Ray Lewis, I'm putting T.O. in now. And that was part of my reasoning at that point in time.
Finally here, there was a conversation, and Bill Cowher pushed back yesterday that Deion Sanders wants an upper tier floor of certain.
He's been talking about that forever, whatever.
Do you think there should be?
No.
So you think Laurie Butler belongs in the same shelf and on the same room with Deion Sanders?
Yes. They're all teammates now. Deion wants special privilege. Okay. He wants to have an exclusive club within his own club. And trust me, I'm not really happy with the total amount of guys that we're putting in the Hall of Fame right now. I really wasn't big into this.
Too many?
Yes, I do. And I sort of agree with that. But I don't run the Hall of Fame. I vote on the guys that they put up, and I vote based on the rules that they have there. But yeah, there are some guys who have gotten in lately that I'm like, I don't get it. I don't believe in this guy. I don't think he's Hall of Fame worthy. Other people do, and that's fine. Okay. I'm not the be all end all. But I also don't buy into Deion's self-aggrandizing BS. Okay. Because this is Deion wanting to be even more special than Deion already is. Okay. That's what he wants to do. And sorry, Deion, you're in the Hall of Fame. Just because you don't want to have your bust next to Leroy Butler or whoever else you think doesn't deserve to be next to you, sorry, screw you, okay? And I love Deion, right? I love Deion as a player. I love what he's doing in college football. But sometimes Deion's going to get called that he's full of it. And right on this one, Deion's full of it.
Okay. Well, hey. Okay. I'm gonna say this to you here. Okay. Not everybody's got a grant. Okay. Not everybody comes from a college that has a grant to it. You know what I mean? So Deion's just speaking from the heart. Okay.
Well, fine. He can speak. I'm not saying he doesn't.
Just because he wants to be special doesn't mean he has to. He's coming from the school.
Deion can argue anything he wants to argue. I don't have a problem with that. And some of what he's saying, I do agree with. But it doesn't mean I'm going to buy his solution. I would rather put less guys in than have this special wing of the special of the special. Here's one. You talk about Bill Cowher. You now start talking about too many guys in the Hall of Fame. Bill Cowher's, like I'm always looking, going, yeah, I don't know.
Bill Cowher's not a Hall of Fame coach.
No, he's not.
You know
But
why
he's
he got in the
in,
Hall of Fame?
and
Because he's
he
on
worked at.
TV.
They had a process, and Cowher got in, and
Oh, was that a blue ribbon deal?
yeah,
That Bill Cowher's not a Hall of Fame coach.
I don't think so either. But he's in. Okay,
Mike
and
Shanahan's more of a Hall of Fame coach than that guy.
absolutely. I mean, look, we talked about Buddy Parker a couple of weeks ago, and we have Buddy Parker on the list this year. He does not deserve, in my view. And again, I have one vote. I'm one guy. I don't think Buddy Parker's a Hall of Fame coach. And now I will listen to the argument, and I could be persuaded. I could be convinced. But yeah, Mike Shanahan, Mike Holmgren. There were three guys on that list who like jumped out to me: Shanahan, Kraft, and Holmgren. If they had put any of those three up there, I would have said, "Cool," right? Any of those three. They didn't. They put up Buddy Parker. And I'm sitting there going, "How'd that happen?" And I asked somebody on the committee, "How'd that happen?" And it was, look, this is just how this thing works.
You think Mike Holmgren's a Hall of Famer?
I would like to see him discussed at the very least. And yes, I think there's a good argument for Holmgren to get in. I'm not sure he's going to get in, but I think there's an argument for it. And if we're putting in guys like Bill Cowher, and we're putting in guys like Dick Vermeil, and we're putting in guys like Don Coryell, we should be discussing Mike Holmgren.
Don't you think Tony Dungy is also in that Bill Cowher conversation?
No, I think Dungy's more important and more consistent than Cowher.
It's because
I back that one. It was close. I'm not saying that was easy, but I think the Dungy's was better than Cowher.
Here's why I questioned. I mean, do you think Tony Dungy over or underachieved in Indianapolis?
I'm sure there are plenty of people who would say he underachieved, but I would also argue that team existed at a time that was really rough when you've got the Patriots sitting there. Okay. Like that's a hell of a duel. And like Belichick walks into the Hall of Fame in my view, right? Like that's just a no-brainer,
completely
right? Absolutely, whatever. He could lose the rest of his games this season for however long he coaches, right? I don't care. Like he's already done enough. He goes into the Hall of Fame. Andy Reid has done enough. He's going into the Hall of Fame. Those guys. Dungy was a discussion. I think Dungy deserves to get in there. I think there's a historic value to Dungy. I think that there's something larger that we're talking about with
yeah.
Cowher's just Cowher. I mean, like this, sort of like George Seifert. Like
I love talking with this because to me, when you bring up Dungy and you want to bring up significant coaches, shouldn't you bring up Dennis Green?
You can, but like Dennis Green was a very good coach. He's not a Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but the impact he had were all the people that came off that coaching tree that were African American that really made impact.
Dennis Green was a very good coach. He's not a Hall of Famer.
Okay,
he had an impact. He has a place, a notation. So
Don Coryell was more of a coach than Dennis Green and more impact.
Yeah, Don Coryell's design of offenses was more impactful, and his legacy is more impactful. I mean, Don Coryell gets you Joe Gibbs. Don Coryell gets you a style of offense that's unique. Don Coryell gets you Don Coryell goes into St. Louis and wins despite old man Bidwell. He then goes to San Diego and wins despite Gene Klein, right? There are certain people who win in spite of the people that they work for, right? Dick Vermeil went to Philadelphia and won in Philadelphia despite who is it? Leonard Toast? Yeah, Leonard Toast. He goes to the Rams, and wins despite Georgia Frontiere, right? Like there are people who do things that you have to remember. What are the obstacles in the way? And sometimes owners are obstacles. in
The
this game.
Bidwells. I mean, think about when you think of Coryell. Look at that guy won division titles in St. Louis.
Right.
Like when he was there, when
with old
the
man
Bidwells were
Bidwell.
there.
Right, with old man Bidwell, right?
Yeah.
With Bill Bidwell running the show, one of the cheapest SOBs in the history of this league, right? Didn't know how to run an organization, and still somehow Coryell found a way to win. And I'm not saying that Dennis Green didn't do some things that were wonderful in Minnesota, but he didn't accomplish as much. I don't think he changed the game. I think he helped some guys get started. He did a lot of really wonderful things. It's not quite good enough in my eyes to get in the Hall of Fame. Whereas Tony Dungy, yeah, he's good enough to get in the
How
Hall
about
of Fame.
Schottenheimer?
No.
206.
I understand. You got to draw a line
He's
somewhere.
fourth all time.
I understand. He's a hell of a coach. Doesn't deserve to get in.
25 years he's had one losing season.
I understand. He's a great coach.
4-14 in the postseason.
No. No. You got to draw a line. You got to draw a line somewhere.
206. He's got more wins
Nice
than
man,
Noel.
wonderful man. All those other things, great
More
leader.
wins than Noel.
Understood. Except in games that were really important, not so good. Marlon McCree still haunts the legacy of Marty Schottenheimer.
206 wins, dude. It's not.
Hey, I was at that game. I was at the game against between Denver and Kansas City. Elvis Gerback trying to march him down the field, and Marty Schottenheimer in a panic, a full-on panic of how do I avoid letting John Elway have the ball one more freaking time. Panic, complete, total panic. Cleveland blew it. Okay, didn't finish. Had him at the 2-yard line, couldn't keep him. San Diego intercepted
14-2.
4th and 11, and goes for it against a Brady-led team that couldn't move the ball. It was, he gave them opportunities to win the game. Like even before that game, your boy Jimmy Johnson says on TV, Marty, don't be panicked, Marty. Play it straight. You have the better team. You're at home. You should roll these guys. You don't have to take chances. You don't have to gamble. And what does Marty do in this one? He gambles on a 4th and 11. No, don't do that. Punt the ball, kick a field, do whatever you're going to do, but don't go for it. Didn't train Marlon McCree. Intercept it and fall down. Fall down. The game is over. We host Indianapolis the following week. We go to the Super Bowl. We roll the Bears. The Chargers that year embarrass the Bears. The Colts just beat the Bears. The Chargers would have it would have been 40 points. It would have been like the 49ers Chargers Super Bowl, which was just over in the second quarter. Marty blew it. Okay. I can't say it. And he's a good coach. He's a very good coach. Dan Reeves, very good coach. Not the Hall of Fame.
I got to tell you one last story before we go here. Okay. So my cousin Dave Pizzuli's playing in Cleveland, and it was for the drive.
Yep.
And Bubba Baker's on the team. And Marty comes walking into the locker room. They're all sitting around, and Marty starts doing this. You're going to love this, Chase. And Pizzuli's sitting here. Bubba Baker's here. Bob Golick's over here. Marty comes in and goes, "You guys, you think for meal moans. You guys, this is the greatest thing." And they're watching him. He's in a full-out bawling speech. Tears are just ripping out of his eyes. "You guys, I'm so proud of you. I love you guys.
Before the game or after the game?
We're going to go into battle." Bubba Baker looks over at my cousin and goes like this. "Man, I don't know about you, man, but I don't know if I want my general crying going into battle."
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I love Marty Schottenheimer. I really do. He's a great quote. He was fun. He was entertaining. He was part of the show. He was great. But you'd say Hall of Fame, and I just go, no, I just can't do it. I can't.
Can you see Big Bubba Baker going,
Oh, yeah.
what, your
I don't want my
General
General so
Hilarious.
great.
Thank you, Jace, for all your time, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Anytime, dude. Be good.
You got it. The great Jason Cole, NFL Hall of Fame voter. Please hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Football and Hooters, the perfect pair.